Hello and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. Happy New Year! I am cordially welcoming you to the new year, and I'm going to invite you to practice some technique in January of this month to get your fingers moving and just like get some good mojo happening at the piano. So for the next few videos, I might be doing a little bit more of a technique focus, and the one that I'm going to share with you today, the technique exercise I'm going to share, is really fast. It's really simple to grasp, and it sounds fancy. It sounds fabulous, and it requires a lot of good techniques to be able to play it properly. But it's also something that I taught to kids. This is the kind of exercise that I love teaching to kids, especially because they can grasp the concept intellectually, but it takes a little bit of work to execute it physically. So they understand it. And I find that whenever I would teach this to kids, they would get obsessed with it just to like get it right. So I'd send it home with the student, and within a week or two, they'd like, I've mastered it. They'd like really like grind it out because they'd get so obsessed with the concept of it. So it's a great exercise for adults as well, though, because it promotes healthy technique in a couple different ways, which we'll talk about when we are at the piano. So let's try it out. All right, so we are at my piano, and the first thing that I'm going to do is actually show you the exercise, what it looks like when it's finished, so that we can break it down and figure out how to actually learn it. So I really want to talk about it beforehand, but I'm just going to show you, and then we'll break it down. So I'll show you that one more time. I'm going to just maybe do it a little bit differently. Very nice. It's a flourish. It's like a nice little, like fancy sounding, like it sounds very fancy. That's why I especially love teaching this to kids, adults too, because it's nice to have like the ability to, if you just sit down on a random piano and you just, whoa, I did it wrong that time. And you just hack something like that together, people are going to stop and be like, whoa, that was kind of interesting. So I'll show you what I'm actually doing here. All I'm doing is a C chord with the damper pedal, essentially. So I'll go in slow motion here. So I'm doing a broken C chord. So a C chord is C, E, and G. Left hand, right hand. So the first motion, okay, so this is step one, C, E, G in each hand. Now what I do is I take my left hand and I put it where my right hand is. And then I take my right hand and I move it up an octave. And I do the same thing, left hand, right hand. So that's step two. So step one, step two. So it's all just C chord. And I'm holding down the damper pedal the entire time I'm doing this. So step one, step two, step three, same thing. So my left hand takes over where the right hand was. And my right hand finishes with a C on top. Because eventually we have to stop it at some point. I mean, you could end it with a broken chord, but I just think it sounds better ending on the C. So step one, step two, step three. All right, and even in slow motion, it sounds really nice. So there's a couple things that I'll talk about why this is a useful exercise in a little bit, but I want to just talk a little bit more about how to execute this properly. Because half of the fun of this one is being able to execute it fast. And that's where the challenge lies. So I divided this into 3 different sections. So step 1, step 2, step 3. I want you to think about these sections as you figure out how to play it fast. So the first section, can you do that? Can you take these slow C chord notes and roll them almost like a guitar, C, E, G, C. You might just want to kind of practice that arpeggiated sort of, it kind of sounds like a harp, right? It's really important while you do this, by the way. And this is one of the reasons this is a good exercise. If you want to be able to play this exercise quickly and have that nice, flourish, beautiful sound, then you really need to make sure that your fingers and your wrists stay loose. Because what you're going to want to do, what's going to be really tempting, is for your fingers to get really stiff and your wrists to lock up. So your wrist is going to get hard and your fingers are going to get hard. And you're going to end up with something that sounds like this. It sounds really almost mechanical and forced and kind of aggressive. So in order to make this sound nice, we need our wrists to be open. You can really just feel feel it in your body. Like if your wrist locks up, your hand doesn't move or swivel or pivot or anything. Your hand just kind of gets locked into position. So when I'm playing these C, E, G notes, my wrist moves. It moves from the bottom to the top, bottom. And you'll notice that as I'm playing it, my wrists aren't staying stiff and my fingers are staying nice and nimble and relaxed. And as soon as my fingers start tensing up and I get the claw fingers, that's when the sound goes out the window and it's not going to sound nice. So the being able to play fast while keeping your fingers loose is the biggest benefit of this exercise. So step one, can you play the step one fast? But a really important part to be able to pull this whole thing together, to be able to do the whole thing fast, is practicing bridges. So what I mean by that is you want to play all the notes of step one and the first note of step two. Because that's essentially, you're bridging over to the next part. So you're practicing that jump in the left hand. Your jump with the pinky. So I'm going C, E, G, pinky on C. So keeping the fingers loose. Just practicing that step one plus the bridge motion. Then we'll do the same thing. Practice step two plus the bridge motion, which involves that left hand jump. Now, once we have that, we'll go a little slower. We're going to put both of those parts together. We're going to bridge what we just did. And this is a bigger bridge now. Now, I just wanted to do it slow to make sure I had it in my head, but now I should be able to... okay, so I stumbled a little bit at the end, so it got a little tough at the end, but... Oh, I stumbled just on that last landing. So then I'm doing step one and two and focusing on that fast motion. And then finally, step three is basically just... And I'm just practicing moving my right hand because my right hand's over here and then it kind of needs to jump. So I'm just practicing that jump for step three. So bridging it all together. You want to practice those fast twitch motions. That's why I find practicing that bridge, this is step one through the bridge, just to practice that leap quickly, to be really useful. So that's how I would put this together. And you're probably not going to get it the first time you do it, but you might get it faster than you think you'll get it. And it's also just really fun to practice. What I would also suggest, if you master this with just like the C chord, then you could always apply this to different chords. So it's really fun. You could just create basically like a mini piece going from C chord, like to the 6, to the 4, to the 5. And you can make it sound really dramatic by playing around with ritardando, like a little bit of tempo bending. You could basically just like make a little mini piece out of that. But it remains that it is a fabulous finger exercise that I highly recommend you give a try. A final note that I want to add to this as well is one of the benefits of this exercise, in addition to being able to keep your fingers and wrists loose, is it allows you to practice keyboard geography. So all I mean by that is just where the notes are on the keys. So if you're rapidly jumping from C to C to C in both hands are jumping across the keyboard, then it allows you to be able to map out where those notes are rapidly and get you a little bit more comfortable identifying the different letters on the keyboard rapidly. So if you master this in the key of C, then you can really expand your the speed of your keyboard geography if you just transition it to different chords. So say A minor chord. Now you're practicing finding A's. And finding A's really quickly. So that can be an excellent exercise as well. I would recommend just playing around with this exercise for about a minute a day. You don't need to spend a long time on that. I know that my younger students do get obsessed with it and tend to practice it more than a minute a day. But a minute a day for a couple weeks, I think you'll be really impressed with how quickly this comes together. And like I mentioned, of course, you can try it out with different chords as well. It doesn't have to be tethered to the C chord, but do start out with the C chord to really get a grip on executing it properly before jumping to the next chord. chords. And once you jump to the next chords, if you've already mastered C chord, it's going to be a lot easier. So anyway, let me know how this technique goes for you. I may or may not be bringing you more technique in upcoming videos, and I hope the new year is treating you guys well. Talk soon.